life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you.
Wow.
Even if you think things are not going like they should, or, you think everything is going wrong, think again. Spirituality is consciousness of victory over self and communion with the infinite. When an emotion comes up for us, we acknowledge it and we kind of allow it to dissipate and it goes away, right? So that emotional experience is over. That's how we should deal with all emotions. But sometimes an emotion's coming up for us and we don't want to go there. So we bury it and we do something else. Well, the problem is that emotion, those emotional energies need to express. And so when you bury an emotion, it's unexpressed. And so now that energy is still in the body.
What do you think is happening when you pray? What's happening in your heart when you're praying and your prayers actualize?
Jesus said, right? He said, ask and you shall receive, and knock and it shall be open to you. He didn't say, you'll receive. He said, ask.
Spiritual Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Bigger, and I'm back again with another episode. And today, I'm so inspired. I got Dr. Bradley Nelson on the podcast. He's written the Belief Code, the Emotional Code, the Body Code, and his new book, The Heart Code. We're going to talk about the heart wall and everything emotional, mental, spiritual. And he's also the founder of Discovering Healing. And he's been married for 44 years. And he's just an incredible man. Dr. Bradley, welcome to Spiritual Fitness. How are you?
Well, Eric, thank you so much for that introduction. The check's in the mail.
Before we get into like the book and the details of what you do, I want to start with your story. I believe, people's stories inspire growth and change within all of us. And I always try to find like that one thing. And doing some research on you, I noticed that at the age of 13, you was diagnosed with something that allowed you to be curious to get more into the depth of the work you do and you offer to the world today. To just take us on the beginning of like how you got to be this phenomenal person and man in today's world. Where did it all start?
When I was 13 years old, I was diagnosed with kidney disease. I had these pains that hit me out of the blue.
Yeah.
And at first I was able to kind of ignore them, but then pretty quickly they just became unbelievably intense, and they would just knock me to the ground or take my breath away. It was like being run through with a telephone pole or some crazy thing. So my folks were worried. They took me to the hospital. They ran all these tests, and they said that I found out later, they told my parents I had kidney disease, and there was really no treatment available for me at the time. And it was about a 50-50 thing, whether I would get better or not. And so, my kidneys were struggling for their lives. And if they win that battle, then that was the end for me, because they didn't do kidney transplants back in those days. It was a long time ago. So my folks took me to see some old time holistic doctors that practiced out on the edge of town in a trailer house in a wheat field, middle of a wheat field. No kidding. It was in Great Falls, Montana, where I grew up. They were really amazing because they started working on me. And I could feel in my body that what they were doing was just what I needed. And the pains right away began to be less and less severe and further apart. And within about 3 weeks, I didn't have any more pain at all. I think I'd forgotten I'd ever been sick almost. And my folks took me back to the hospital. They ran all the tests again, and they said, well, it's a spontaneous remission. Whatever we did must have helped. But I knew that it was these other doctors that had helped me. And so I decided, this is what I need to do with my life. I'm going to be a doctor. If I need to practice out on the edge of town in a trailer house in the middle of a muddy wheat field, that was okay with me, because I thought that's the natural habitat of doctors that seem to know what they're doing and get results. And, that was really a really powerful beginning for me. And then I became a computer programmer later. And then I just became head over heels in love with computers. And this is back in the early 1980s, when the personal computer first came out. And, the Apple II and the IBM PC, and man, those were amazing times. So exciting. My job was, I had a business called The Computer Tutor, and I would go into people's businesses that had just purchased a new IBM PC, and I didn't know what to do with it because there was no software then, virtually nothing. So I would go in and look at the flow of how they did everything, and then I would write some software that would enable them to use their new computer. And it was all pretty basic stuff back then, but But I really had a great time doing that. It was really fun. So I decided I was going to stay in computers, and then that dream of being a healer kind of got further and further away. In the winter of 1984, my wife and I was about 6 months away from going into the master's program in business at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah. And we went home to Montana, and we're sitting around with my mom and dad. And my dad, totally out of the blue, says to me, "Are you sure that you don't want to go to chiropractic school? Because it seems like a great career, and you've always wanted to do that." And I said, "No, no, I'm going this other direction." And he said, "Well, why don't you think about it one more time?" And so, my dad was an amazing guy and very in tune. And so I thought, well, all right, as I told him I would. So my wife and I made up a pro and con list of these two careers, right? Going into computers and business and so on, going to work for some big company, or becoming a doctor and helping people to get well. And they were both really compelling. So that didn't really help. I felt like I didn't know what to do. I thought I had my whole life plotted out. And now I'm like back at square one.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dad. But anyway, having learned for myself that God is real and that he loves us and will give us answers, my wife and I got on our knees that night and prayed and asked for help about this decision because, it was a big deal, right? Big decision. The whole rest of our lives, where we live and, all this that we're going to do is going to be affected by this decision. So that night I went to sleep and I woke up a couple hours later, and I woke up to find my mind full of all these warm, happy thoughts about going into the healing arts and helping people get well naturally and serving people. And I think I thought something like, well, yeah, but the new IBM PC has a 4 megahertz processor, and 8K of RAM, something like that. So then I went back to sleep. And that happened 2 more times that night. I was awakened twice again, and I would counter those thoughts. So the next day, I still don't know what to do. So that night, prayed again. And on the second night, I was awakened 3 more times. And each time, the thoughts were exponentially more powerful than the time before. And the last time that I was awakened on the second night, the thoughts of service to mankind and humanity and the whole world were just absolutely overwhelming. And then I heard a voice at that moment that said, "This is a sacred calling." And I thought, okay, I accept. And I didn't have any idea really what that meant, but I knew that was the path. And so so I went to chiropractic school, got into practice for myself, practiced for about 18 and a half years. And I had a great time in practice, loved working with people, but I was really obsessed with trying to figure out what was really wrong with people. And I also had this habit. I thought, well, God's gotten me into this. Maybe he'll help me. And so, when I would go to work on a patient, before I would just have a moment of silence for myself where I would ask God to help me. And there were times, Eric, when information would just flood in about what I needed to do to help that person. It was really great. But eventually I got to a point where I realized I've got to get out of practice because this information that I have learned has got to go to the whole world, right? So I left practice in 2004, published the Emotion Code book in 2007. It didn't look like this then. It was,
It's a nice book.
Simpler. This hardcover.
Yeah.
And then the following year, after the Emotion Code book came out, one morning I woke up and my mind was full of instruction. And the instruction was, you need to take everything you've learned about natural healing and put it into a self-study course that anyone can learn and make it available to everyone everywhere. My first thought was, you sure about this? Yeah. Sounds like it could require some work. I'm kind of lazy. And so anyway, that became the body code. And then finally wrote a book about that. So grateful that I listened because I know that there have been other things, other instructions that I've got and other things that I felt like, oh, that's a great idea. And then if you don't write it down,
Yeah.
You forget.
Yeah.
I think it was Zig Ziglar that said, I could be wrong, could have been somebody else, but ideas are like fish. And if you don't gaff them with the point of a pen, they'll get away.
Yeah.
And it's true.
And it's beautiful. So, while you were talking, things were coming through for you. Because I have that sense of, that's how I changed my podcast to spiritual fitness. I pray before I get in every episode. I pray a lot. And that's why I want to tap into the energy that we're about to tap into for the listeners and for people, because I think the times we're living in, we need more powerful things from the unseen world, more certainty. than logic, right? So I want to get a little bit context about your faith and belief and spirituality or religion. I don't know where you started for you to have that moment to pray, right? To make that decision to go into a chiropractor world to pray again that night, right? I'm just looking at the patterns here. What was your faith before that moment of prayer? And what has happened since you made that decision within your spiritual container within yourself?
Yeah. Well, great question. My ancestors on both my mother's side and my father's side
Yeah.
uh, were early members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints back in the Illinois days before they got driven out of Illinois and came out to Utah to, to find a place where they could be safe. And when I was a kid, uh, I wasn't really interested, in religion. I got to be 15 years old. I actually was a runaway, ran away from home. I had a very, very powerful spiritual experience. It's interesting because for many years I couldn't share this with anybody because it was so personal and so private. But in the scriptures, it talks about something that's called unspeakable joy. And I had an experience where I actually experienced that, and that joy was created by this knowledge that suddenly was infused into me that God is our Father, that He's real, that He lives. And I know why it's called unspeakable joy. And it's because you can't speak it to anyone. You can't ever explain it. You can never make anybody understand it. It would be like trying to explain to somebody what peanut butter tastes like who had never tasted peanut butter. You can't explain that. If you could strip away everything from me, uh, in the deepest part of my heart and soul would be that knowledge
Yeah.
that God lives, that He's our Father, He loves us. So that's been part of my motivation.
At what age was that moment for you?
I
Unspeakable.
was 15.
15?
Yeah, and I wasn't asking for it.
You're
I was
definitely chosen. You're definitely chosen to live out this journey you've been living. That's like
I've had
unspeakable.
Yeah, right. I've had lots of different spiritual experiences that have taught me these really fundamental truths about our existence.
Yeah.
I had an experience one day where it was just a routine day. Patient comes in, lays face down on the table, and I have my little moment of silence and ask for help. And I turn my attention to this person, and all of a sudden, it's like my spiritual eyes are suddenly open for the first time, and for the first time, I comprehend the actual reality that I'm standing in the presence of a most sacred temple, the temple of this person's body.
Wow.
And it just instantly filled me with the deepest sense of reverence and awe. And it was like a window that opened, and it was open for just a few seconds, and then it closed again. But it was absolutely unforgettable. I had heard that the body's a temple. We've all heard that before, but guess what? No, no, no. It really is a temple. And I know that it is. So I had experiences like that over the years. I think that everything that's happened to me and all these experiences that I've had have helped me and have prepared me to bring this healing work into the world because we live in a world where we're born into I believe, a state of total amnesia where we don't remember anything from where we were before, but we were with God before. And I had an experience about that too. We almost immediately start being lied to, in a sense, I think, by mostly well-meaning people about what we're capable of and how the world works and what we can do and what we can't do. And so we end up, it's almost like you take a tomato, right, and you put it into a box and it grows in a box. It comes out a square tomato. And so that's kind of how it is for us. It's like we grow up in these little boxes and we come out of them. We're all blockheads. And we can only, we're very limited in our thinking and about what's possible for us and so on. And so it's been a really, really interesting journey for me. I was just kind of obsessed with getting to the roots of my patients' problems. And that's really what led to all of this, these books and everything, and all of our, thousands of practitioners all over the world. It really grew out of that. And then as I began to realize that this is actually not that difficult,
Yeah.
anybody can do this, then I started having this amazing drive, this really powerful drive to teach this. And I started teaching seminars in July of 1998. So now we've taught seminars all over the world. I was just on the phone last night with a bunch of people in Japan, and you know, I'll be speaking to 10,000 people in Switzerland this Sunday. So, yeah, we're, just,
It's a process. And I think
yeah.
for what I'm hearing, what I want people listening that's going to watch this as well is that soul work is slow work, right? And root work over branch work, because then that work works and then it allows you to be more in your body, to have the embodied experience, allows you to be more in your heart, because a lot of us are disconnected because of the phones, technology, and the world is changing. And I want to get back into the prayer, but I want to move into like, because in my journey, I've heard heart coherence. I saw something that you said about the heart wall. Now, I want to bring you back into prayer. You might not have the answer, but it's coming to me to ask you this. What do you think is happening when you pray? What's happening in your heart when you're praying and your prayers actualize? They manifest, they come to fruition. What do you think is happening? Because I know when I pray before something or I pray in a certain state, I don't have to think about it. Magic always happens. Miracles take place. Fulfillment comes in, unspeakable joy. Like listening to you, it's like he gets it. Because I used to think I was weird for knowing all these things that don't make sense to the logical brain. But for prayer in the heart code and the heart wall, what's happening within our heart when we pray in the unseen and then it manifests in the seen?
There are a number of things. I think if you boil it down,
Yeah.
when we pray, say, for example, we're asking for help about something.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, when we pray, we're admitting to ourselves and to God that we don't have the answer, right?
So right.
So yeah, so we're actually humbling ourselves a little bit, right?
Right.
Right, and we're enabling ourselves to receive that help. And when we pray, I think what it does is it opens a conduit for that help to flow to us. I think that if we don't pray for help, then we're just kind of on our own. Jesus said, right? He said, "Ask and you shall receive, and knock and it shall be open to you." He didn't say you'll receive. He said, "Ask." It's really interesting because let me tell you a story. My former executive assistant, she's retired now, but she became one of our staff practitioners. Wonderful, amazing woman named Connie. Connie grew up with another girl who had that ability to see the spirits that other people don't see, right? And I've talked to a number of people over the years that have had this gift. It's a gift. And they always say, well, it's kind of a blessing and kind of a curse, because sometimes you don't really want to see the spirits, but it's a real thing and spirits are real. I mean, if you believe in angels,
Yeah.
then those are spirits. And, anyway, one day she came to visit Connie, and she was at Connie's house with her, and Connie was going to do some sessions, some body code, remote, distant sessions, right? And so her friend said, "Is it okay if I just sit in the corner of the room and see what you're doing these days?" And they hadn't seen each other for a long time. And Connie said, "Sure, fine." When she got done, her friend had been sitting there quietly the whole time. And when she was finished, she said, "Connie," she said, I don't know if you know what's going on here." She said, "When you went to work on that first person and you had that moment of silence and you were praying for that person and asking for guidance," she said, "I saw spirits come in and stand behind you. Sometimes I could tell who they were. They were like family members that had passed on, or maybe sometimes it was people that were not born yet. And they were there very intently focused on helping you to help that person on the other side of the Zoom line or whatever, whatever it was." And she said, "When you were done with that person, they left. When you had your moment of silence for the next person, a whole different group came in." And that went on, for an hour and a half, a couple of hours. And this is another really key, very powerful thing, I believe. When we ask for help, what it does is it unlocks the ability of those angels, right, to come in and be around us and whisper to us the information we're looking for, the answers. And those answers on our end, we perceive those answers from the angels, sometimes as an audible voice, and I've heard that before in my life, but Most of the time, it's just kind of maybe a subtle kind of a feeling that you have, an intuition, an impression, right? An idea that suddenly pops into your head that you think, "Oh my gosh, I'm so smart. I had this idea." The angels are probably going, "Oh, well,"
Yeah, true. True.
right? But those angels speak, I believe, by the power of the Holy Ghost.
Yeah.
They speak the words of Christ. They speak, the information that God wants you to have. And so this is one of the reasons why we really counsel all of our practitioners to ask for help from up above, because otherwise you're on your own, right? And why do that? I mean, when you've got the power that is keeping all the planets in orbit,
Mhm.
you know, why would you want to not tap into that power? Why would you not just want to be on your own? That seems kind of silly to me.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think it's incredible to know that we have power within our power that we can't see through truth consciousness. And I remember 2023, I went through a very dark night of the soul. It's a tough year. I was like, what has happened? And I remember God whispering to me, like, stop going to your mom and dad. Come to me. I got this. And I was like, because my mom had said, she said, son, look, there's only but so much I can give you as a parent. I can give you just enough, but you got to count on God. And I knew that, right? But I've never in my life been so disconnected from my body, dysregulated, overwhelmed, confused, lost. I was really having an identity crisis. Like it was going through an ego death. Like it just didn't make sense. But I said, okay, God, let's go. And I just went straight to my knees. I mean, I've always prayed, but this was like, I can't depend on flesh anymore. I can't depend on people. It's not man is flawed at things and we're not perfect, but I know I can't go to people. I got to go to God. And then over time, I was willing, like, okay, if I have to start fresh, let's go. And I just went back to the basics of what I've always done. And I think when you excel in life and you have success and you progress, you kind of forget those little things, the morning gratitudes, the deeper prayer where you're more present. You're not just praying because it's a habit. It's actually a sacred initiation for your day and your morning, right? And for people out there today, and this is about doing spiritual fitness, what I offer is that before I get into any client's call, any podcast, I pray before I get in. We have our session, I pray at the end. But it's like I'm zipping up the energetics, right? I'm zipping it up the frequency. And we're in like a super consciousness portal of having a strong, empowering, healing conversation. And I really want people to know the power they hold within their self. So with your book that's coming out, The Heart Code, what's in the book that people can utilize and benefit from to understand how to be more grounded in their body, but connect to their heart and not have fear of their heart?
It's such a fascinating thing. I mean, first of all, when I was in practice
Yeah.
working with people, releasing their emotional baggage, I found that that was incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
That people had physical pain because of emotional energy trapped in their bodies, that there was emotional energy that was present in every disease process that I've seen actually now in 37 years of doing this. That emotional baggage is at the root of things like depression, anxiety, and phobias, and all kinds of things. But there were times when I would come away from working on a patient and I would just have this nagging feeling that I was missing something. There was something else going on. I wasn't finding it. And so what happened was the answer to this came. And because I was trying to know, really, if there's something that I'm missing, help me to understand what it was. And it took a while. And finally, in 1998, my wife and I were at a conference. She woke me up early on the morning of this conference and told me that she'd had a dream. And in the dream were these symbols that she knew had to do with her health and well being. And as I was trying to help her decipher this dream, I had one of the most remarkable experiences in my life because I had what I can only describe as a waking vision where suddenly we're in this hotel room, suddenly that room's gone and I'm seeing this unbelievably beautiful hardwood floor. I'm telling you, when God gives you a vision, I mean, it's high def.
Yeah.
It's 3D. It's unbelievable. And at the same time that I'm seeing this floor, which lasted for several minutes, I have this understanding in my mind that my wife's heart is underneath this floor.
Wow.
Now I have no idea what this means. I mean, I never had anything like this happen before and never had any kind of a vision or anything. And I told her what I was seeing and understanding, and she didn't know what it meant either. So we prayed and asked God to help us figure this out. And then I started asking questions of her subconscious mind using muscle testing, trying to get some answers about this. And what we found was that when she was 2 years old,
Mm.
see, she was born into a very difficult family. Her dad was a rageaholic. Nobody knew when he was going to blow up or who he was going to blow up at. It was just really unsafe the whole time she was growing up. So when she was 2 years old, apparently she felt like her heart was going to break. And so her subconscious mind started to build a wall around her heart. And that wall, the symbolic material for that wall was hardwood, because she grew up in a house with hardwood floors. She remembers her dad putting in the hardwood floors. And so that was the symbolic material that was chosen. But this wall was made of layers of emotional energies from these trapped emotions that she developed during her life. So we asked, well, can we start releasing these? And her subconscious mind said yes. It took us 2 weeks to release these emotions. When that last emotion was cleared, she was with a group of women, and never in her life had she ever felt like she belonged, really. She always felt like she was on the outside looking in. She never felt like she was part of a group until that last emotional layer was gone and her heart was opened. And suddenly she felt like she belonged. And the depression and the anxiety that she battled with melted away. The fact that it was easier for her to feel negative emotions and harder to feel positive emotions, that shifted. It all shifted dramatically for her. And so in the very beginning, I thought, okay, this is a really wild, amazing thing that she put up this wall. Of course, she didn't know it. It was totally a creation of the subconscious mind, right? And I thought, well, she's had some weird things. God bless, me with her, because she's been my guinea pig. I've fixed a lot of things on her. So I thought she was probably the only person in the world that has such a weird thing. No, no, no.
Yeah.
90, we think about 93% of people have put up a wall.
Oh, wow.
And, the ancient peoples believed all over the world that the heart is the seat of the soul, the source of love and creativity and romance and the core of our being, right? And they got those ancient ideas because of how they felt when someone was really hurting them, or if they were maybe seeing someone perform beyond their natural abilities and they were touched or moved. And so that's where those old ideas come from. But in the West, if you look up in a modern biology textbook, you won't see anything about that, about the heart, being any of those things. Because in the West, we're very advanced and we know the heart's just a muscle. That's all it is. Well, they discovered that the heart contains a lot of gray matter and white matter. And they discovered that, probably 100 years ago. But it wasn't until 1991 that a paper was published where they actually were beginning to understand what that little brain in the heart actually does. There are 40,000 neurites in the heart, and they call it the little brain in the heart, and it's a completely separate nervous system from the brain in your head. Now, when you can align these two brains, right, and that's all about heart coherence, right? When you're in a state of calmness and love and gratitude, appreciation, and so on, then those brains can align, and then you're able to receive better information, right? You're better able to tune into your creativity. And so, but what we have found is that when you feel like your heart's going to break, the subconscious will put up a wall, right, around that heart. And so we have seen so many amazing things happen. The hardest part of writing this book was going through 10,000 testimonials to decide which ones were going to go in here. And it ended up dividing into 5 chapters. In the middle of the book, we call it True Stories of Healing. So there are health stories in here, abundance stories, where people have their heart wall taken down and suddenly abundance begins to flow into their life. Stories of freedom and renewal, love stories, animal stories, because animals also develop emotional baggage and sometimes heart walls as well. And so, we have seen just so many amazing things. A week ago, or no, it was a few weeks ago now, got a testimonial from one of our practitioners who said that she was working on an elderly woman in her 80s, spinster, never been married, never really had a long-term relationship. She's in a nursing home. and she gets her heart wall cleared. And within a week, she has fallen in love with an elderly gentleman, dapper guy, I'm sure, down the hall a ways in the nursing home, you know. And so she's having that wonderful experience now of actually being in love, which is the best thing there is, right?
Mm.
Nothing better than that,
God,
right?
let me tell you something. And it's so interesting that I could relate to this experience in a different way because 2023 I also experienced heartbreak. And because I was the guy that everybody comes to for help, I didn't want no one to worry about me. But I would feel this thing on my heart. I'm like, oh, I think my heart's broken. But I was so afraid to tell someone. So I met someone. She hosted a cacao ceremony for me in Joshua Tree. She said, pick a rock. We put our third eye, heart on it, breathe in 3 times. And I've never did anything plant-based medicine, plant medicine. So I drank the cacao. And at this time, I felt betrayal, heartbroken. I got rid of my friend. I really went through an awakening. Like I had to lose most of everything I thought I should keep. I was drinking it and I lay back and I look up and I see her and I just started to cry. And I said, thank you for allowing me to trust people again. And that day, that sacred journey in Joshua Tree, walked around all the rocks and, felt the vortex, is like the pain or the wall around my heart, like fell off, like broke off. Like, I'm like, hold on.
Yeah.
What? Like, it's gone. This is weird. And with the Mojave Desert, we connected with the ancestors. I gave an offering. She did this pro bono. She said, I just think you're great. I want to help you. Um, yeah. And then the next day I get a call and say, I'm getting from my ancestors that, and her name is Sia, that I want to invite you to Peru to do plant medicine and come to the journey. So she said, it's up to you if you want to do the medicine, but it's 11 days spiritual journey. We hike Machu Picchu, we do the Inca Trail, Al Sagande. Mind you, I never smoked marijuana. I never did any drugs. I used to drink. I stopped drinking in 2019. So this was like, I'm never doing it. And I judge plant medicine. However, I did the journey 11 days, 2 journeys of Wachuma, St. Pedro. And when I tell you, I had this thing that came to me called Happy Joy. And it just like, I was just so happy. And soon as I come home, I find someone who's now my person to this day. And I'm in love.
Bingo.
And I was like, what are the odds? And my cousin was like, you just got out of a relationship in November. It's July the next year. How? I said, I went on a pilgrimage. I hiked mountains. I took medicine. But what I realized I felt, doctor, like whatever was in my trauma, the energetics, it's like it was a clearing. Like it cleared my energy. I just felt like something left my body, like left my soul and opened me up to real love. And it was like the best journey. It was the best journey ever because I ran from love my entire life because I had a mother wound. So I always wanted to give and not receive. So the fact that you have that book, I know, and I haven't even read the book, but living testament of the heart code, the heart wall, this stuff is real and it's like magic.
Yeah.
And I want people to experience that for themselves. But I do have a tendency where I run into people, they're so afraid to get hurt. They're so afraid to risk their heart, but they'll risk their money, but they won't risk their heart to get greater love. What do you think from your research based on a book? What keeps us in that blockage of fear? Is it past heartbreak? Because it's a beautiful feeling.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's actually the emotional baggage itself.
Oh, okay.
So in other words, what happens to us is that when an emotion comes up for us, we acknowledge it and we kind of allow it to dissipate and it goes away, right? So that emotional experience is over. That's how we should deal with all emotions. But sometimes an emotion's coming up for us and we don't want to go there. So we bury it and we do something else. Well, the problem is that emotion, those emotional energies need to express. And so when you bury an emotion, it's unexpressed. And so now that energy is still in the body. Or sometimes what we do is an emotion comes up for us and we decide, yeah, I'm going to feel that emotion. In fact, I'm going to really feel that emotion. And we get really upset, right? And we amplify that emotion off the chart. And that also results in that emotional experience not working. And so that energy also now is trapped in the body. And sometimes what happens is we have emotional experiences that are just by their nature overwhelming, right? someone suddenly close to you has died, or a relationship suddenly you're in a breakup and you weren't expecting it, or someone's been injured, or some bad things happening, and that emotion is just overwhelming. So that also will result in what we call emotional baggage, right? Now, what that emotional baggage is, a trapped emotion is like a little ball of energy, right? And it's that energy the subconscious mind will use and will put up around the heart to protect the heart if you feel like your heart's going to break. And that's such a common thing. So many of us have experienced it that about 93% of people have put up this wall, right?
Yeah.
I have to tell you what is my favorite story about this. Um, it was a woman that came to see me in my practice. She had pretty severe neck pain. It was about a 9 on a 0 to 10 scale. Been going on for a while. She'd seen a couple of other doctors for it that hadn't been able to help her. So she comes in to see me, and I'm talking with her and taking a history and everything. And she tells me that she's 38 years old. She's a nurse. She hasn't dated in 8 years. She's never going to date ever again. She's going to live the rest of her life as a single woman and die single.
Wow.
And she was dead serious. And I said, well, gee, why do you feel this way? And she said that 8 years before, she was really deeply in love with this guy that dumped her and broke her heart. And that was it. She was never going to date again. So I tested her, and guess what I found? She had put up a wall around her heart. And that wall was comprised of 3 layers or 3 trapped emotions.
Mhm.
And they were all from the breakup 8 years before. So I cleared those 3 emotions. It probably took me, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 minutes is all. When the last emotion was cleared, her heart wall was gone, and guess what else was gone? Suddenly her neck pain went from a 9, boom, to 0, instantaneously, right? Just like that. And she was thrilled because it'd really been bothering her. And I was grateful too. I didn't have to do anything with her neck. So she left the office feeling totally fine. Doesn't come back. 3 months later, she comes back. And I saw her in my hallway. I'll always remember this. And because I recognized her immediately because I thought about her. She was the only celibate woman I'd ever met, right? And it just made an impression on me. And I said, hey, I haven't seen you for a while. How are you? And she said, well, my neck has been fine since I was here. But she said, you cleared that heart wall for me. That really works. She said, about 2 weeks after I was here, I found out my childhood sweetheart has been living right around the corner from me for almost 8 years, and we're dating and we're in love. And I think he's going to ask me to marry him, right? Now, think about that. I mean, her childhood sweetheart living right around the corner for almost 8 years, and they never had run into each other in 8 years. Why not? Well, here's why. She had this wall, right? So she wasn't open to it. I got to tell you one more story. One of our practitioners told us this story. She said that she went to work on her sister. Now, her sister had been divorced, I think, for about 9 years. She was alone. And she'd never let her emotion code practitioner sister work on her. And so one day she calls her up and she said, listen, sis, I've been alone for 9 years. She said, I think I've got baggage. I'm tired of being alone. I've got to find somebody. I'm not getting any younger. Will you please come work on me? And so she did. So the two of them spent a couple of days together, the weekend, Neither one of them told anybody what they were doing, but she was able to clear her sister's heart wall, right? Get rid of all that emotional baggage. Now suddenly her heart is open. Guess what happened on Monday? And remember, neither one of them had told anybody what they were doing, but on Monday, the phone started to ring. Who do you think was calling? Well, guys that had known her years before. And suddenly, because that heart of hers is open and she's now sending out that pure essence, like a bell ringing, right? They suddenly are on that frequency. She's on their frequency suddenly. And all of a sudden her name pops into their heads. Oh yeah, Marcia. Wow. Haven't thought of her in a long time. I heard she got divorced. I wonder what she's doing these days. Ding. Hello. Right? I'm telling you, it's amazing.
Art code. So I'm curious. This is just a thought, and I'm not saying it's a suggestion. Have you ever done like ran an experiment with just say 10 to 15 women and men, or just in general people that because you said you cleared the other girl within like 5 minutes. That's a gift. That's also your practice or what you know and what you train others to do, have you done multiple people at one time when you're healing their hearts and then their life changes? Because I believe that's where all the energy is stored and all the pain and the baggage. What is the most practical way for a person to heal that part of their soul from their heart? How do you, and then heal the heart, but also connect to those two brains? What's the practical advice you have, or that might be in the book that people can tune into to kind of clear that? Because I feel like that's blocking most people from love, success, opportunity, and greatness that they deserve to live in.
It's harder for you to get into coherence where the heart brain's connecting to the brain up here, right? It's harder if you've got a heart wall. And so our theory is if we take people who have a heart wall and we test them as opposed to people who have had their heart wall cleared, we think we're going to see a very discernible difference. We're very excited about that. Um, so the Heart Code book, the whole purpose of this book really is not only to call attention to the heart wall phenomenon again, which we taught in the emotion code and also in the body code, but it's really to shine a new light on this. It's to shine the light again on this unbelievably powerful phenomenon, because when that wall is taken down, Eric, people have told us that for the first time in their life, uh, they understand what it's like to feel that emotion of love, or to feel the emotion of joy, or to feel the love of the higher power for them. Think about that. I think that that higher power, God, is always radiating love on all of us. In fact, I'll tell you something. I believe that it is love that is the force that is in everything and through everything and around and about everything in the whole universe, keeping the planets in their orbits and keeping our hearts beating and keeping our bodies working and growing the plants and doing all of that. I think eventually we'll find out it's absolutely unconditional, perfect love from God. And when people have that heart wall removed, suddenly they realize that that's their kind of, it's like, oh, they're able to pick it up. It's there all the time, but suddenly they're able to perceive that.
Before we get out of here, I'm curious your thoughts on the subconscious, right? And then two, what's your theory or beliefs around plant medicine and psychedelics coming into this new earth, this new time, things, technology advancing so much? What is your experiences with your beliefs, and how can we use the subconscious and or plant medicine to heal parts of us that it's hard for us to do on our own?
I think that everything that we have in this world,
Yeah.
all the plants and everything, they're all created by God. As human beings, we have a tendency to go overboard. We have a tendency to overuse things, to get addicted to things and so on. But I think that everything has a purpose. And so, and plant medicine, no different, right? I've talked to people who've had great experiences with plant medicine. Um, in fact, I was at an event that Mike Tyson came to, and he talked about his experience, with mushrooms,
Yeah.
and how he had never taken mushrooms before. When he took them, he suddenly had this realization. It was kind of like he was perceiving himself from outside, which can be very useful. Because in his case, he apparently was really a toxic personality until he realized it, and then he was able to make a shift. So I think that there are reasons for everything, and everything is put here by God for us. So you know the easiest way to get rid of the heart wall really is to get a copy of the book and then just follow the instructions, because this is actually a how-to book. Tell you how to get rid of the heart wall, and you can do it yourself. And in the book, you'll also learn how to do it on your family members and your loved ones. I mean, imagine if you've got, if you're like most families, there's probably some level of dysfunction and disconnection, but getting rid of the heart wall is also, I believe, one of the most powerful things you can do for your physical health, because I observed in my own practice, the last 10 years that I was in practice, most of the people that I saw had been told there was really no hope for them in Western medicine at all, right? And what I would do with all of these patients is I would do this examination when they would first come in, and I would check all the organs and find out how balanced all the organs were and all the glands, the meridians, the chakras. And I would usually find 80% to 100% of the glands and organs would be imbalanced.
Yeah.
And sometimes with these people, I would just do one thing. I would just clear their heart wall, nothing else. And then I would redo that whole initial exam, and I would inevitably find that 80% of all those organs and glands and chakras and meridians now were balanced where they weren't before. Because the heart, there's so much more going on with the heart than we realize. I mean, you get a heart transplant, don't be surprised. If you get a heart from a baseball player, you're probably going to love baseball. Yeah, you get a heart from somebody that loves Chinese food. Well, guess what? You might have hated it before. Now you're going for Chinese food.
Yeah. That's beautiful. But what is so the book? We're getting the book. Where can we find the book? How can we get into your energy? And do you offer one-on-one counseling or like how do people work? I know so many people that just come to me like, oh, I would love for them to see him or see what you do because I think that's the thing is their heart. It's not even like the finances. It's not the mind. It's really the heart that's controlling all of these decisions and patterns and habits and paradigms to free the subconscious. Because you said something on one of your episodes or interviews that the subconscious looks for conclusions, not solutions, or something like that.
Yeah, the subconscious is always it doesn't make any judgments about things. It's only drawing conclusions. One of my favorite people is a woman named Cameron, who was she was on the Chicago Police Department, police force, south side of Chicago. And after I think about 5 years on the force, she was so traumatized and had so much PTSD from all the horrific things that she had seen that she became deeply suicidal and had to leave the force. So for the next few years, struggled with suicide. She owned a gun, and it was a constant battle to not shoot herself. And she tried all kinds of things, everything she could think of to get over this. Nothing worked. Nothing worked. Nothing worked. Finally, she was introduced by her mom to the emotion code. And she was really mad at her mom because she knew it wasn't going to help her. But her mom talked her into trying it. And so she wrote out, she was done. She was at the end of the line. She wrote out her suicide note, dated it 90 days in advance, and started using the emotion code and working on herself. And in 45 days, halfway through, she was completely well. And that's why people like Tony Robbins, he wrote the foreword.
Mentor. He shifted my consciousness at 22 in LA. I didn't know what to do. Was by myself in Los Angeles. Like I need a mentor. I need help. I read every book, Unlimited Power, Awaken the Giant Within, YouTube. That guy is amazing. And it was his story. It was his story growing up. His mom and having money and Thanksgiving. And it was his story that shifted him and changed him.
Like he says, life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you.
Yeah.
Even if you think things are not going like they should, or, you think everything is going wrong, think again. We got a great endorsement from Greg Braden, who was just on Joe Rogan.
I love Greg Braden and Bruce Lifting. You remind me of these guys, like your frequency.
Yeah, these are friends of mine.
Oh yeah.
And, amazing guys. In fact, I'll be seeing Bruce for sure. I think I'll be seeing Greg this weekend in Switzerland at the event there. But we have a goal to open 1 million hearts. This book comes out December 2nd.
Yeah.
You can read it today. You can read it immediately. You get it. If you go to our website at drbradleynelson.com, that's drbradleynelson.com, there are free gifts, okay? Special for this podcast. Just use the code Spiritual Fit, okay? Spiritual Fit. So you just use that code, and there are you get a free 1 hour live group webinar with me. If you buy more books, you get more incentives. If you buy 5 books, you're doing your Christmas shopping, you get 5 people this book, you will get a free heart wall session with one of our certified practitioners. This is the best Christmas gift you can give to your friends and family. I mean, think about it. Give them something that will actually change their life.
Oh, thank you. That's beautiful. Well, before we get off, last question. What is spiritual fitness to you?
Well, spiritual fitness, I'll tell you what I think it is. And I'm going to steal a definition and quote somebody. There was a man named David O. McKay who was the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints back in the 60s. And he said, spirituality is consciousness of victory over self and communion with the infinite. There you go.
So it is. Well, Dr. Bradley Nelson, thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy and sharing. The Heart Code comes out December 2nd. I got to get 5 copies because I want that session. But I do want to give people something they can change their life tangibly in instance if they do the work. But other than that, you're on Instagram at Discover Healing.
Yeah, Discover Healing and Dr. Bradley Nelson. And we're on Facebook and YouTube. Sure. Yeah. All over the place.
But we can go to your website to get all the other goodies and the books, the emotional code, the body code, the belief code, all the codes. To everyone watching, listening, follow him. Get his book, The Heart Code, coming out soon. Subscribe to the podcast, Spiritual Fitness. Look at the YouTube. And people, this has been another Spiritual Fitness episode. Dr. Bradley, thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. See you again.